How many of you here today have heard of the concept of privacy? Raise your hands. Thank you. Good. Now, how many of you here know of the importance of privacy, whether it is for personal reasons or for societal reasons? Raise your hands. Great. Now, how many of you here feel that they do absolutely enough to protect their privacy and their personal data? Exactly. About 12 years ago, my mom walked into my room, and she told me, "Kristina, you've put too much personal information on your social media. Take it down immediately." I felt quite bad. I was like, okay, probably should take down the home address. But now, fast forward to 2023, I asked my mom about personal data. We were sitting in a cafe, and I asked her, how do you deal with protecting your personal data? How does it feel? And she tells like, it's overwhelming, it's difficult, and it feels like it's already out there and there's not much that she can do. And as we were sitting with a friend of ours, we talk about how we can protect it and what the implications are, whether for democracy, for personal reasons, and about governments and corporations. And at the end of this conversation, my mom turns to me, and she tells me that she's angry at me for bringing the topic of personal data, because I pointed out she is not angry at corporations, at governments, at anyone. She is angry at me. And I didn't do anything wrong. I just brought up the topic. And that got me thinking about what kind of emotions this rather abstract topic brings out of people. And I started asking people. I've asked my friends, my colleagues, I've asked my family. And the reaction that I got mostly was defensiveness. The defensiveness from a personal trainer who, when I just asked the question whether you do something about personal data, she went like, well, I know I should be doing something, but it's so difficult. There's like the cookies and everything, so it's really difficult. A friend of mine, when we were sitting and talking about it, I didn't even ask the question. He went on for 15 minutes telling me about how it's all impossible, doom and gloom, and there's nothing we can do about defending when I didn't even try to make an argument for it. And that got me thinking even more, what is behind it? What is behind the feeling of anger? What is behind the feeling of defensiveness, of wanting to just hide away from this topic that is important for many of us? And I realized that the feeling behind it is, to a large extent, shame. It's shame on one hand that it feels like everyone around you understands how this technology works. It feels like everyone around you knows it, and if you ask the question, they will think that like you just don't know enough. And on the other hand, it is personal data. It is our most private conversations that we don't feel like we can have in real life. It is something that we search for when nobody is looking. And on top of that, it's already been more than 10 years that most of the technologies that we use are here. And we've given up so much that it feels like it's too late. And there's nothing that we can do. I have a degree in philosophy from one of the best universities in London. I wrote a dissertation about how the impact of data influences our rights to freedom of speech and freedom of thought. I've researched the impact of data trade on developing countries and how it influences imbalances of power. I worked in the organization that brings about the discussion about the impact of data. I now run my own company about data and AI ethics and education. And about every day, I look about the impact of technology, whether it be in LinkedIn or talking to people. And yet, I feel shame. I feel like I can't protect my personal data. Like, I feel like there's nothing I can do because it feels like it's all or nothing. You either have privacy or you don't have privacy. And that's terrifying, because I'm not okay with not having privacy. And it took me time to realize that it's not all or nothing, that I can take small steps. I can show myself compassion, I can show myself understanding, and I can start talking to people. I can start with small things. And the steps that I took are the steps that we actually have thanks to amazing organizations, the NGOs, nonprofits that work to protect our rights. We can all download our data from whether it be devices or platforms, social media, and in most circumstances they have it in settings. It's really easy to do. In others, you can request it separately. When I downloaded the data, I was expecting to want to delete it straight away. But when I've seen what I've been searching for 12 years ago on YouTube, I was like, yes, I want to know more. What has been going there in my head? But then obviously there were things I wanted to delete. In order to make sure that there is not that big of a flow of my data out there, I went through the privacy settings, which actually keeps updating on many platforms as regulations come in. And I went through the privacy settings. I went through Facebook privacy settings a few times before, but somehow I found something new, that a lot of things where I was opted in for sharing my relation status, my education, my employment, everything. I was like, oh, thankfully I don't have this information in the first place, but there was a high chance of me having it there. Thanks, Mom, for 12 years ago making me delete it. And then I also found every single tag of what I'm targeted with on Instagram and Facebook. That gives you a much better profile than any test that you do online. And finally, we have the most powerful AI that we can ask all the stupidest questions that we think are stupid. They're not, obviously. And make it explain it to you in the way that is understandable to you specifically. You can ask ChatGPT, you can ask Google, you can make it explain it in a way that a certain professional understands it, or your kid understands it, and make it entertaining as well for yourself. Data, and especially personal data, is behind most of innovations that are happening today, including AI. And it's understandable that it's scary, it's really fast-pacing, and it's difficult to adjust to it. But you have to remember that you're not alone. The person on your right and on your left most likely feels the same way. And by taking small steps, we can take control.